So here we can see the kidneys in section, where if we return to the previous slide, if we've taken a section through the posterior abdominal wall, approximately where that line is, then we can look down onto the kidneys and we can see this is the posterior aspect here. This is the anterior aspect. We've got the liver, and here we've got the anterolateral abdominal wall. We can see the kidneys are here on the left and right in this paracolic gutter, which we can see. We can see the lumbar vertebral bodies here, and we can see the transverse processes. We can see each of the kidneys sitting on this muscle bed. But what we can see also is that the kidneys are surrounded by a substantial amount of fat, which is surrounding the kidneys here. And this is the paranephric and the perinephric fat, which is positioned around each of the kidneys. So each kidney is surrounded by this perinephric fat, like a perimeter fence around. And this is continuous at the renal sinus, which is this space here. We can see this space, this kind of hollow space within the kidney, and that's the renal sinus. And the fat of the renal sinus is continuous with this perinephric fat that surrounds it. The renal fascia surrounds the perinephric fat, and we can see we've got a tough kind of membrane around here, which is surrounding the kidney. And then lateral, superficial to the renal fascia, we have paranephric fat. And this is found superficial to this fascia, and it's positioned more posteriorly. This capsule helps to support, with its fat that's surrounding it, support and maintain the position of the kidneys. So let's have a look at the kidneys in this view, which shows the various relationships the kidneys have with the other organs and also their blood supply. So first of all, we're looking at the kidneys, looking at the anterior surface of the kidney, and we can see with this convenient key that we have at the bottom here, in red, we can see this right kidney. This is the right side, and this is the left side. That most of this kidney here is associated with the liver. And remember, the space in between the liver and the kidney on the right side is the hepatorenal recess. And that recess is continuous with the pelvis via that right paracolic gutter. We can see at the suprarenal aspect of each of the kidneys, we have the suprarenal glands. So we've looked at the suprarenal glands and we've looked at the liver. Here we can see the hepatic flexure, or the right flexure of the colon is sitting against the kidney. We can see it here. And we can see it has relations with the jejunum that are sitting alongside this more inferior pole of the kidney. We can see that towards this hilum, we have the duodenum, sitting against the kidney in this aspect near the renal hilum. And then we can see on this side, on the left, we have the stomach, we have the spleen, and we have the pancreas, and we have the descending part of the colon. So these shadings indicate the relationship the kidneys have sitting on the posterior abdominal wall, the anterior relations they have with those organs. And you can see they're coming into contact with a lot of the organs within the abdomen. If we look at the blood supply, then we can see this really clearly in this diagram. If we look to the right-hand side, we can see we've got the inferior vena cava, and running down the midline, we've got the abdominal aorta. We can see those unpaired rissal branches, celiac trunk, superior mesenteric artery, and down here the inferior mesenteric artery. And what's shielding the renal arteries are the renal veins. Here we've got the inferior vena cava, and we can see that the kidney is giving rise to this left renal vein here. Coming away from the kidney, we've got this left renal vein. Coming from the right kidney, we have the right renal vein, and these will then drain up towards the heart in the inferior vena cava. We can see draining into the left renal vein here, we've got the left gonadal vein, testicular or ovarian, and that's draining into the left renal vein. These are shielding the arteries that lie behind them. Because the left renal vein runs anterior to the aorta, it's longer and it courses across. Here we can see the aorta. It's running in front of the left renal artery, which we can see here. The left renal artery can, in fact, course anterior to it, right at the hilum of the kidney, which we can see here. So we can see this nice blood supply, and these blood vessels come off at around about L1, L2-ish region, where the renal arteries and the renal veins pass to and from the kidney. So this is a really nice diagram showing the blood supply and the relations of the kidneys. Here we can just see the notes that I've added to go alongside this. We can see the renal arteries and the renal veins. We can see that the renal artery has a longer one on the right. That's because of the position of the aorta relative to the inferior vena cava, and the right renal artery passes posterior to it. And then we can see that the renal veins are draining into the inferior vena cava, and we have a longer left renal vein as it's passing anterior to the aorta. So a nice diagram indicating the blood supply and the relations of the kidneys.